we are. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. Thanks for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the new moon report for the Virgo new moon on September 17th, 2020, and for the entirety of the lunar cycle that will turn over with the next new moon, which is October 16th, 2020, and that'll be a new moon in Libra. So our new moon today on the 17th is at 25 degrees Virgo, a flag at half mast. And as you see from this chart here, we also have Mercury in Libra in square today to Jupiter, now direct in Capricorn. We also have the new moon squaring the moon's nodes. And also on top of that, we have the new moon in trine to Saturn in Capricorn. Saturn is still retrograde. So there's a couple things that are going to happen throughout this cycle. One, we're going to have a Libra moon right after this new moon. So we're going to get an emotional and a subconscious preview of how this Libra cycle is going to pan out. I really feel like that this new moon is setting the tone for the rest of the quarter because the autumn equinox is happening within this cycle, so close to the new moon. And we are going to have the Libra moon right after this new moon. And so there will be kind of this preview period, a trailer, so to speak, of how the rest of Libra season is going to play out. But I do feel like that it's so strongly connected to the autumn equinox that we're going to see how this season really, it's setting the tone for the season. And there's a lot of there's some pretty interesting things happening within this season, not the least of which is the elections in the United States in November. So but we're just focusing on the lunar cycle. So what's happening is the autumn equinox is happening during this month. We also Saturn and Pluto will both station direct during this lunar cycle. So then all of the Capricorn energy that's been retrograde is they will all be moving direct now. So we're going to see some gears turning in a new way that we haven't seen in a minute because all of this stuff has been represented by retrograde planets. So things are not fully expressed in retrograde or they're inverted. Maybe we're just paying more attention to them, but they don't seem like they're going anywhere. This is now going to shift as Jupiter is now direct, and then Saturn and Pluto in this cycle is also going to go direct. What the moon does over the weekend is going to, like I said, it's going to be almost like a mirror of what is going to catch our attention as the sun then moves through Libra throughout the month. So we'll talk about that specifically. We talked about about these planets going direct. Now, Mercury is in Libra. So a couple things about Mercury in Libra. Libra is ruled by Venus, the planet Venus, which she's the goddess of love. Even though Libra is an air sign representing justice, right? Fairness and justice. It's about symmetry. It is about sacred geometry, right? It is about things being aesthetically balanced. They feel and they look to the eye. You know, Venus is very much about, especially Taurus too, it's very much about things being pleasing to the eye, pleasing to the senses, and vision is a sense, but it's also about Libra is about balance of the material realm. So even though it's an air sign and is rooted in the mental constructs, it's really about using the mental constructs and our ability to conceptualize and to analyze in order to balance out the material world so that it is fair and just and aesthetically pleasing and symmetrical. So even though Mercury rules, you know, Mercury is the god of communication. It represents the magician in the tarot. It is the movement of data and language and the logos. Mercury and Hermes it was the only deity that could go into the underworld and back. No other deity could do that, not even Zeus, so there are certain walls or boundaries that these archetypes were meant to exist within, and Hermes or Mercury, because of the speed at which Mercury is able to move, because it's all the movement of data, right, is the movement of light. It is the movement of information. So digital signal, right? And so Mercury too can also represent this claircognizance, clairsentience, specifically claircognizance. And being clairvoyant and also being clairaudient, all of those aspects can come in. The downloads, it's very mercurial. It is about the actual pieces of data. And so when Mercury's in Libra, really easy to conceptualize balance and fairness and justice, but it's completely devoid of the physical material aspect that is represented by Venus ultimately. So there's a lot of conceptualization of what's fair and balanced and even information, but it hasn't like been brought into the physical material realm and the senses, which is what Venus offers as the ruler of Libra. So even though Mercury's here and we can conceptualize it, it's in square to all of this Capricorn energy, and Mercury is going to go retrograde during this lunar cycle, move into Scorpio, and then come back into this area. So these are themes that are going to come back around with a retrograde Mercury. It's going to be even less. It's going to be even less capable in some ways of really feeling what it's like to be balanced, and feeling actual justice and fairness. It's just going to be a conceptualization, and coming up against these squares like this, especially in Capricorn, which is about dense energy. It is the actual material law of nature. It is the lifetimes and generations that it takes to build economies and governments, and the amount of power they hold because they're so rooted in actual building of structures, building of culture, building of society. This is what's being, remember, when Saturn and Pluto came together in early January, that was the beginning of the overhaul. And it brought the overhaul, the transformation in Capricorn. When Saturn came and met Pluto, it completely solidified it and made it real. And so this is what this is all playing out now. And so Mercury can conceptualize justice and fairness and balance and symmetry, which is great. But coming against all of this really strong Capricorn energy is going to be a real challenge. And that's happening today with Jupiter. Jupiter direct now, representing or in a degree that's about political leadership or political power, not even leadership. Jupiter is about leadership. And now that, Jupiter has gone direct, there's been a lot of abundance and good fortune and peace and balance, right? In the leadership in certain places, and using the political power in order to do something positive, to create peace and to negotiate. Jupiter is a manager, right? Is not in terms of leadership or a lawyer, for instance. And so there is understanding the spirit of things as and then when you're talking about Capricorn, you're talking about actual state institutions and the economy and things like that. And so you can see that things are being expanded in a very fortunate and positive, optimistic way now that Jupiter is moving direct. But they're big and dense aspects that are being expanded upon, whereas Mercury is light on its feet. You know what I mean? It moves quickly and swiftly and is able to conceptualize things in the mind, which happen in an instant, right? Whereas these are actual real-time shifts and changes that take actual time. So you can, and as Mercury is going to square all these energies, it's going to keep going. It's going to square Pluto, it's going to square Saturn, go into Scorpio, and then go retrograde and come back and square them all again. So as retrograde, and then square them all again, going direct much later, and that'll be part of the longer report. So what else is happening this month? Well, this new moon is also square to the moon's nodes, which is our soul's evolution, the dragon that pulls us along, that the desire to evolve, and what pulls us along and attracts us, right? We want to be heading towards the north node in Gemini right now, and the south node is where we've been. We've mastered it, and it provides the momentum, the tail of the dragon swooshing back and forth, that provides the momentum to move, but is ultimately at the end. We need to leave this energy behind, take it for what it is, but know that we're headed this way, which is really hard because Sagittarius is very optimistic. It's connected to Jupiter. It's also very dogmatic and very much based on collective belief systems and understanding about how the world works. And action, there's friction that creates. This is alchemy, sacred alchemy, in Sagittarius. And having this square to the North Node, having this square, the squares to the new moon, there is movement here, especially because we're Gemini and Sagittarius. So there's a lot of mental activity still, and also using that mental activity to create actual alchemy to make changes in material reality, which is Capricorn. There is a reminder here that the intention to set is about our own personal development and to feel the tension with where these nodes are pulling us in different directions, and know that they are different. This is a collective movement, whereas this is reminding us to set intentions about each of us fulfilling our destiny, which means having to put the time into aligning with that destiny and preparing ourselves for that destiny. So pulling us back into this contraction point, and I talked a lot about this on the daily today, which is on the Facebook, on the wall for Facebook for Catalyst Energy. So you can always get the daily intuitive reading. Really puts the astrology into intuitive perspective. So we talked a lot about that. So that's just the new moon and what are some of the major transits along the way. So the autumn equinox is going to happen on the 22nd, and then the mental energy is going to just shoot through the roof because Mercury will be in trine to the North Node. The moon will be in Sagittarius and will cross the South Node. So you're really going to, there's just going to be a lot of positive, optimistic, expansive, creative energy and a lot of mental activity coming into the equinox, which is the sun coming into Libra. And so we get the very basic, fundamental, distilled aspect of Libra, which is total balance, right? And our attention is at this point of justice and material balance. And there's just going to be so much mental activity and so much positive. And I think this is a good moment for us if we don't get fully pulled into the South Node and the potential to create by fire, right? It's because we're going to need it as we go along. At this point, Mercury's already squared Pluto. So let's talk about the weekend, because this is the moon in Libra, and it'll give us a chance to look at what to expect as things unfold. So this is the next day. This is the 18th. So the moon will have, at this point, will have already opposed Chiron. Chiron in Aries, there's so much, there is protection right now. There's a certain amount of protection, spiritual protection. Like we are aware that there are spiritual forces at work, but at the same time, the victimhood comes from the idea that we still need to be protected, I think, in some way, and not, and then when we are made aware of some of these forces, it might be a little bit overwhelming to our psyche. And so then we feel like, because we're talking about Aries, we're talking about fire, we're talking about the spark of divinity and creation, and we're getting a sense of it, right? We are feeling this potency and this desire, this spark of creativity. We're feeling it, but we're also not fully engaged in it yet in Aries. It's just a potential within us. And so, but this also, we're still, I think that we're still kind of feeling, it reinforces this, like our woundedness and our identification of like victim savior. If we are not taking full on responsibility for what's coming in and the potential that we have. it's kind of an interesting symbol. So having the moon in Libra, which is a blazing fireplace in a deserted cabin, which is basically like um, there's always the seed of potential. There's always, remember the seed of potential that started this whole process. You can always come back to that. And so the moon, I think, in this first moment, in opposition to Chiron, is giving us a chance to reconnect and remind ourselves, at least emotionally, that there is that fire to come back to, even when it feels like that we are totally deserted. And as Libra moves through, because Libra is about the justice and fairness, and so you have to be able to at least engage with the idea that there is some measure of inspiration and creative energy at the center of everything that you can go back to stimulate and to uh, give you a sense of what is fair and just. Because Chiron is just, it's just so much like poor me, poor me, not even realizing that you're so protected as the spiritual energy is coming in, because it's not even at its peak yet. So this is a good moment right here and this is over the weekend. And now the sun is now in trine, fully, it's still in trine to Saturn, and coming from 25 to 26 degrees of Virgo, which is where the sun is when it is in trine to Saturn. It's like you have that flag at half mast. It's a total recognition of of all of the job well done to get to this point. And then the next degree is stepping into the actual materialization of that. And so it's in trine to Saturn in Capricorn, making it so absolutely like real and supported by the law of nature from actual reality and the implicit energy that flows through all of life. That's what this degree of Saturn is all about. And so we um, we can step into our role now when what with the sun and the moon, actually right after the new moon is in trine to Saturn retrograde. This is a great moment to like anchor into the um the role that we're playing, even though the role is still in an internship type of thing, right? Is absolutely backed up by something very strong, and very much embedded into the fabric of reality in a good way. And being able to see the hidden forces that is, the Reiki energy, being able to know that it's there, and then step into our role as part of being part of this process. This is great, especially if you're doing the work and you have accepted that it's time to embrace going into this darkness, right? So that's, and then you have the moon, like I said, in Libra. It's coming close to Mercury. This is the 19th, so we're looking at Saturday, coming closer to Mercury, is now starting to square. It's going to square Jupiter. The moon's going to square Pluto. The moon's going to square Saturn in late Libra. And we can get an even, and then passes Mercury as well. At this point, Mercury's at 20 degrees, and so it's past Mercury when she squares Pluto and squares Saturn. So she is, and this is an important degree to keep in mind, because this is very close now to where the next new moon is going to be in terms of degrees, 24 to 25 degrees Libra. And late Libra, we're really getting a sense of what we know and what we've figured out so far, is like where things need to be situated in order to have balance and justice. The scales of justice have been, taken some time to really make sure things are balanced, and you're getting to this point now where you're feeling pretty sure about your ability to do so, and also to transfer that knowledge, because we're getting real close to Scorpio, moon and Scorpio. And so these squares are really going to challenge what we think we know and what we think we feel is right and just, when it comes to all of this. Pluto and Saturn are still retrograde, but Jupiter is not, moving forward, expanding. And then from there. And so this is also, the sun's going to do all of this. So this is just an internal preview. You're going to see it pop out in your subconscious, in your dreams, and maybe in your personal lives, in your relationships. And then as the month rolls on, the sun is going to come into Libra and is going to have all of these same connections. And then it'll be really in our awareness, and something we may want to express. You know, the sun rules Leo, express or act upon. So there's Saturday, and then we come into the moon in Scorpio, and then the moon is going to, look at this, in opposition to Uranus in Taurus, which is also retrograde. And so we're going to start emotionally sinking pretty deep in. This is the moon card in the tarot in terms of an archetypal connection, the moon in Scorpio. So we're about to go deep in at this point. It's going to be in opposition to Uranus, which is the collective awakening, and it's still really about cultivating the ego, the individual ego consciousness from which everything is built. You know, the neuroplasticity of our brains is a gift that allows us to decide where we want our attention to go and where we want our mental energy, what pathway we want it to follow. And this has a lot to do with that right now, is really rewiring and reprogramming our actual minds and nourishing that as well. But the moon in Scorpio, we're starting to get a really clear view of what it means to be in relationship, the power dynamic, the fact that death is a part of all of this. And communion is a big part of the Scorpio archetype, because you're talking about relationship. You're talking about the deepness, the deep waters of relationship, right? This is where the moon is going to be. And we're going to get a really deep view. And the moon struggles in Scorpio is not a good position for Scorpio, because you can just sink to the bottom. And this is a dark place to be. And if you can't find your way out, or you're not secure at all, or you don't have any grounding, you don't have a root system anywhere, this can be dark for people. And so to be also in opposition to Uranus, that is about this reframing, reprogramming of our own individual ego consciousness in order for us to collectively wake up. The moon, though, is going to be like, we need to save these people. We need to save the drowning people, which is the degree that it's at. Drowning man being rescued, because we are going to feel so deeply the communion, and that develops as a result of shared bonds, right? Bonds are really big with Scorpio and the 8th house, and resources that go along with it. And a bond is a resource, but then there's also other resources. So when the moon gets here, it's going to start really challenging this process, and we can get really emotionally taken away with the moon in Scorpio and get very dark and very morose very quickly. Okay. And so from here, where else is going to happen? It's going to also square It's going to try Neptune. The moon will try Neptune. The moon will also square Venus in Leo. You know, Venus really wants to express herself. She just wants to be the fullness of who she is. You know, she wants to love. She wants to commune. She wants to be a flower that is opening. And that's very Leo energy. And the moon in Scorpio is really getting deep and very serious. And so these things are certainly going to be at odds with each other. But then the moon is going to trine Neptune. So again, this depends on how you're handling the Scorpio moon. If you're not a person that's comfortable in this place, this can be serious, just dissolving into total delusion about where things are going. It also can be drawing away the curtains that keep you in the dark and looking at the path ahead of you in between these two polarities. Now that if we're able to do that amidst the Scorpio energy, that trine to Neptune is really going to inspire us. We can get a lot of really deep inspiration from that place. I would watch your dreams for sure. Absolutely. This is the 20th, Sunday, the 20th. So we're getting close now to the equinox. And so we'll just kind of go up to that point, and then I'll talk about the major themes for the rest of the month, including the full moon that's coming on the 1st of October. So here we go. The moon is moving into late Scorpio. That means it's going to sextile all of our friends here in Capricorn, late Scorpio into Capricorn. So sextiles are great to act upon. We really are getting a sense of what it means to be empowered, where power comes from, the darkness of power dynamics, and the dynamic of life and death. You know, the dark night of the soul, you've come back out of it. There's a level of mastery around that now, and it's in sextile. So this is really going to help us, I think, integrate these experiences as we move forward. I think we're going to really go very deep very soon, and I don't know what's going to trigger that necessarily, but something is going to transpire, I feel, that is going to allow us to have a very personal dark night that will, once we come on the other side of it, which is going to be on the other side of this weekend, honestly, that we will be able to figure some things out. Now, that's because we're going to go into Mercury, and then Mercury is also going to square Pluto at that point as well. And so that's also going to be a real challenge to staying positive and, responding to the potential of a renewal. But here we go on the 22nd, we have Mercury is going to be in trine, Mercury in Libra in trine to the North Node on the equinox. And so this is, the last degrees here of the sun in Virgo. So this is when the mental energy, and I think it's going to be very, very positive at this point because there's a lot of mental energy. We have the sun coming into Libra representing the full, the archetype of this balance and justice and the need for adjustment in a very physical way. It's going to represent the distilled version of that energy at the same time that Mercury is in trine to the North Node. There's just going to be so much air energy at this point that, and then you have a moon in Sagittarius that's eventually going to cross the South Node. So not only that, it's going to be positive. There's going to be a lot of honesty. There's going to be potentially a lot of there could be some friction, right? But it's really to create something. There's an understanding that is involved. The big picture is Sagittarius, and it's collective belief systems. So it's important not to get totally emotionally pulled into that, but we could really use that energy on the equinox as well. Of like, where have we been? Our ability to actually create something is very strong, and we've been there. We can use that as momentum, and we can emotionally feel that, and it can really cast us off into a whole new direction. And what a great way to start the autumn equinox, because this is really when the harvest begins. So it's there's going to be a lot of mental activity, like I said, and but a lot of optimism and a lot of hope, maybe some hopium, depends on where you're at with it. If you get sucked into this, then yes, absolutely. Oh boy, that's going to be an opportunity for that. But remember, you have to engage Mercury in order for that to be the case, because it's a sextile. Mercury is in trine to the North Node. Lots of focus on the activity of the mind just in its purest sense, without any need to engage the polarity actively. That's what Sagittarius is, engaging the polarity actively in order to create friction, which creates a new thing. Gemini is just, the ideas exist and they just keep coming. And that's where Mercury in this degree of Libra, which is, like I said, it's important to realize, because this is where, very close to the new moon, this is an Arcturian, this is the fixed star Arcturus. So this is an Arcturian starseed marking where Mercury is. So just keep in mind that the realm of the mind is going to become more important once we get to this point of the harvest. Because right after that is the first quarter square. So we are now in a place where the sun is at 2 degrees. Look at that. Oh my gosh. You have the sun right, or the moon right over the South Node. You have Mercury that is now squaring Saturn. And we are going to have the moon is going to come into, let's do a couple hours ahead here. The moon's going to come into Capricorn and square the sun at 2 degrees. And this is, oh boy. And then the moon, before even that happens, is going to trine Mars. Ooh, this is going to be popping off and Mercury square. There's going to be this moment where we're going to get a really big mental infusion, and then it's going to shift right into the fire energy really being supported at that point, with the moon in Sagittarius and Mars retrograde in Aries. So this isn't exactly easy to catapult off this, but remember, it's so close to the South Node that this is where we've already been, and we have to be mindful of where our minds are, because again, here's Mercury going to be squaring Saturn as well. So even the realm of the mind, as much as we know and that we've collected and we figured out, and we're about ready to go into Scorpio to get really deep, even though we have an idea, a knowledge that we can even transfer at this point, Saturn is just, the wall of reality as well. So we're going to get challenged. And then we're going to get challenged with the first quarter square, which is 2 degrees of Libra, which is the seed, the moment of seed potential. This is the moment when the seed is, the fruit is harvested or decays or whatever, and the naked seed is presented, because that is going to be the beginning of the next cycle. So you have a moment where this is a raw potential. This is the 2 degrees of Libra, is going to be in square to 2 degrees of Capricorn, which is the damaged window, right, of the, in like a Gothic church, you have the stained glass windows, and then there's going to be one damaged, and it represents very simply the trade-off of political power when you have to use violence in order to protect it. It's the 2nd degree of Capricorn. Everything that can be built can be broken. And the minute that you try to start substantiating or bringing in, to a collective sense, your power to bring it in, there's always the chance that it will be taken away or destroyed. That's just the nature of reality. And so the fruit has to rot in order, or be eaten, or there has to be the destruction of the fruit of the plant in order for the seed to be exposed. And so that the sun is there showing us that there is a point to this cycle of something having to die and to fall away and to decay in order to, and we see the seed. We have an opportunity to see that seed, so we have trust in the cycle. While the moon is in Capricorn, it's super serious, and also being like, wow, at the same time, emotionally, I am not accepting. I see that, like, things that it's the emotional aspect that is worth paying attention to in this situation with the first quarter square, because it's a damage, right? It's damage when something that we've built is, the other side of it is the destruction that can happen, and we aren't thinking about it in terms of the balance. It's so, because Capricorn is so dense and it's so strong and it's so much about power, and that's come up a lot in the dailies about the power. We're going to feel the destruction that has to come along with that, whereas the sun, which is more optimistic and clearly much more about our expressiveness and our outward active consciousness, is saying yes, but the damage is a necessary part of the cycle in order for it to start over again. So we're really going to start being challenged about, and it's just going to, I feel like it's going to get a lot more real as we continue on. Mercury is going to is still square to Saturn and is now in opposition to Mars as well. Mars in retrograde in Aries it really wants to be moving, and it is frustration all along the way. And Mercury is like, no, we're just gonna ride high. And so finding the fulcrum here is going to be really important, where we don't completely disengage mentally, but we don't want to be totally sailing above, but we don't also want to be so embroiled in the battle of dealing with disappointment and loss of potency that we like just get sucked into it and we're really frustrated. So this is also coming along right after the first quarter square. So we already have a crisis in action with what are we going to do, and it's really about, are we going to accept this process, or are we emotionally going to fall into the destruction of see it as destruction, or are we going to see it as a necessary part of the cycle? And then you have Mercury in late Libra. It's really starting to slow down, right? Well, not too much. It's going to go into, actually go more further into Scorpio before Mercury really starts to slow down. But now is in opposition to Mars that really wants to act, and but just is not in its power as much. Well, neither is Mercury and Libra, to be honest. And so at least here you can find the fulcrum between these two energies that are not really at their best strength. So finding the balance, I think you can get the most out of it, which is being able to see a higher perspective and conceptualize that higher perspective, but also realize that there is a strong desire and hunger to regain a lost opportunity through the use of our imagination, because we are talking about potency to create, and that's where Mars is. It's just Mars wants to move forward, and so going back over this point is just really frustrating, but there is an opportunity here. So from here, let's see, we're gonna go a couple days ahead here. This is so, it's a lot, I know. So our moon's going to be moving through Capricorn, so that means that the moon's going to start meeting up with all of this energy. So now we're going to start really recognizing the gravity of all of these aspects in a real way. We still have the opposition from Mercury to Mars, and now we're going to start seeing the sun come into opposition to Chiron. Right now, and opposition to Black Moon Lilith, but soon it'll be in opposition to Chiron. And we will remember what it felt like when that happened right after the new moon, when the moon moved into Libra. So now the sun is going to be really obvious, and it's going to be really expressed, and we're going to feel this opposition from Libra to Chiron, or to Aries. So the sun in Libra to Chiron in Aries. And so what else is happening? So the moon is just going to be so, like, we're just going to have such a direct connection to all of this Capricorn energy. And then the moon will then move in, and then Mars comes into, let's see, Mars is going to start coming into a square. There's just so much squaring. There's so much squaring energy with what's happening in Capricorn, from Mercury in Libra to Mars in Aries. There's just a lot of opposition, and there's just a lot of challenge to these very real institutions and cycles being completely recalibrated to the realm of our communication and our personal knowing, to our action and wanting to do something about it as well. It's just really being challenged consistently throughout this process. So, but the moon is then going to move into Aquarius, and we are going to see that Mercury is about to move into Scorpio, and then we're going to start getting, this is probably the planet that is most able to go into this realm and come out, without getting trapped there. So this is good. And we see now Venus is coming into its trine with the South Node and a sextile to the North Node, and now is going to be trining the South Node. So we're really going to have to participate in this connection between Venus and the North Node if we want to still be heading towards this collective destiny point. Whereas Venus trining with the South Node, pretty much, just a couple of degrees away from the galactic center, she's really going to feel very good about this place of creation and friction and collective belief systems. Let's see, 24 degrees, Leo. Let's just look at it. 24 degrees, totally concentrated upon inner spiritual attainment. This is where Venus is. A man is sitting in a state of complete neglect of bodily appearance and cleanliness. Very not Venus, right? She is not going to do that to herself. But it is about total concentration. And there can be no halfway measures if the goal of true yoga is to be reached, this total union. And so she's completely concentrated and focused. And she is in trine to this aspect. And this degree, 24 degrees of Gemini and Sagittarius are so opposite each other. It's kind of weird. The 24 degrees of Gemini is children skating on a frozen pond. And it's the idea that you need this cold surface in order to move and glide a pond, right? Like this very essential uh, duality here. Let's just read it because it's Dane Rudyard just puts it in perspective so well. Children skating over a frozen village pond, the use of inhibiting circumstances for the development of character and a transcendent approach to the environment, triumph over entropy, right? So if we have total concentration, and I mean, Venus isn't going to let herself become unkempt, but she is willing to totally concentrate if giving the right motivation. And then from there, she's able to, to triumph over entropy. But she has to really participate. Whereas this degree is about, it's the bluebird at the cottage. I mean, it's how much more of a blessing. A bluebird perched on the gate of a cottage, the reward which meets every effort at integration into a social environment for those who remain true to themselves. Good fortune is going to bless your life. So, again, we can connect here to the fact that we have had this in the past. We've mastered this energy. We used it as a means of creation and alchemy. And Venus Venus in total concentration of the goal is very much connected to kind of expecting this good fortune and abundance, but this is more about utilizing that total concentration in order to triumph over entropy, which is really what we want to do. But it's going to require a little bit more, a little bit more uh, of a effort from us. We have to participate in this process. And then you have Mercury that's about to move into Scorpio. So just keep that in mind that Venus here is just like, okay, I'm ready to like get into to be like totally full sovereign here. And as a way to triumph over entropy. And not to just take for granted that there's good fortune and abundance, because it has come in the past. And we have the moon in Aquarius is just so aloof. You know what I mean? It's definitely able to see things with our intuition without being, without sinking into the emotion of it, using our emotion as opposed to being the emotion. So that's really going to help at this stage as well. Venus is also going to come in, you can see it already starting, is going to come into a trine with Mars. And Saturn is going to station direct. And this is all before the full moon. You see it right here. She's starting to come into this trine here. And then also, where are we at? Mars, again, is still square with Saturn. And Saturn is still technically direct. Let's see, 20, that's the 27th. Mercury is entered Scorpio at this point. Here we go. Venus is trine Mars. Ooh, this is great. They're going to get along so well at this point, especially in Leo, because she is just like, yes, I am the center of my universe right now. And Mars is very, there's some frustration here, but she is definitely helping this along. And maybe even, helping Mars just helping Mars relax a little bit. Okay. Yeah, because I mean, Mars is now just like overwhelmed with energy, and then going back over this point, it's just like, I have to move backwards, and I have all of this like potent energy to hold on to. And, I have nothing, I have nowhere to go with it. And so in a trine to Mars is in Leo, it's just like, I am fully ready to combust just in general. 26 Leo, what is that? 26 Leo. After the heavy storm, a rainbow, linking above and below, the covenant with one's divine nature, promise of immortality. It's the revelation of worth. Oh my gosh, this is beautiful. I think this is really going to help balance out where Mars's frustration is, because there's a lot that Mars is holding that he really wants to do something with, but it's retrograde. And so Venus is just like, don't worry. Like, I am here to hold the space after the storm and let you know that you are worth something and I value you. And it will be time for Mars to go direct. It's just not right now. But Saturn is going to station direct as of, let's see, the 29th, it looks like. And here we go. Saturn state. Now things are going to come into form. Okay. Things are definitely going to come into form. And you also have the opposition now with Chiron. So it's going to start becoming very real. And then we're going to have to make a choice about where we're engaging. And it's going to be right in the middle here. We don't want to totally rely fully and leave ourselves open, with nothing. But in terms of, there is a protection, obviously, but we also don't have to feel like we can't hold our own, right? In this, where Libra is, because with Libra, there always is the collective to, I don't want to say depend upon, but there will always be a balancing point and always a fire to come back to, that allows us to reconnect with who we are, so that again we can go back to the process of justice and balance and fairness. And this is where the sun is situated in his opposition to Chiron. We kind of have to step out a little bit from this like protective energy if we want to actually create something, but it's always going to be there. We always have the opportunity to go back. And that way we have to take responsibility for ourselves. Whereas with Chiron being the wounded healer and the archetype of the victim, you're not taking responsibility, you're projecting it out. And that's why we're still like kind of protected and not taking on the full brunt of this, the spiritual energy that is available to us. Now with Saturn going direct is basically saying, well, you better get balanced here, because I'm going direct. And then this pervasive hidden energy throughout all life is going to be unavoidable, and you're going to have to work with it in some way. So that, I think, is a really positive thing. Like I said, Mars is also going to be squaring Saturn. So and then you have Mars that really wants to act on these things, but it can't, is then in square to Saturn. That's just like, well, it's here. And that seems so frustrating to me. I feel like a lot of frustration is going to come, especially with the moon in Pisces. Oh my Lord. Is going to meet up with Neptune. This is going to be, I think, a really nice moment where we're just going to melt. I think we're just going to melt into it as a relief, which, because I think we're going to need that as we come into what will be a full moon in Aries, very close to Chiron, very, very close. So we'll have 10 degrees, the sun in Libra, 10 degrees, the moon in Aries. And, we can use the calmness, that comes with the Libra energy, because it is really about a balance and striving towards some sort of balance. We can use that as a way to show where emotionally we can revise our attitude. We can have a change of heart with a new cycle. And then having the moon come right up to Chiron right after that, it's going to show us where we can, especially around our wounds. So by the time the full moon rolls around, we get to make the decision about how we can change our attitudes, how our inner experience, our creative potential, how we can be. So much of this is about learning how we can be the masters of our own destiny, but we have to go through the process. And part of this is realizing that some parts of us need to die in order to release the potential for the next cycle. And that is we're going to see, I think, a lot of that. We're going to see a lot of that with this upcoming full moon, which is on the 1st. So this takes us up through the first half of the lunar cycle. So we have Saturn's gone direct. We had the autumn equinox. We had a lot of oppositions from Libra energy to Mars and Chiron. So there's a lot of frustration and wanting to act. There is a lot of still identifying with our wounds as if they are they are everything we are. And but there's also been a lot of connection, a mental connection, especially on the equinox with Mercury and the North Node, and Venus trining with Mars. It's really, you know, being willing to like fully engage in the practice of being the fullness of herself in order to, hold the line for Mars and his incredible frustration, and valuing Mars, saying there's going to be a potential, and looking into when Mars goes direct, I think is going to be really important. So let's let's see here. We'll move to the full moon, and then we'll just go by week just to kind of get the big ones going on, which are basically the Pluto also stationing direct. So there we go. Now that's going to get activated. The aspects that Pluto is transforming are going to get, we're going to start aligning with them. It's going to be very powerful, I think. So here's the full moon here. The moon is in Aries. The sun is in Libra. Sorry. So within this next week, this is going to be the third quarter from the full moon. So we've now seen what we need to let go of, it that allows ourselves emotionally and internally to, and personally, revise our attitude at the beginning of this next cycle. And it's the calm waters of the sun in Libra at this point that is going to allow us to see. There will be some respite, I think, coming into October, at least to a certain extent. There's a lot of frustration, and that's why we have to kind of let go of a need to act on things while Mars is retrograde. Things are happening, and and then with Capricorn, all of them going direct, things are definitely happening on a big scale. So we have to be prepared for what that means and what that's going to feel like as we move forward. You can't make these big, huge changes in the fundamental material of reality as we know it without it having an impact on all these levels. And so we are preparing. This new moon is preparing for us to step into that by the end of it. And all of these aspects are giving us this chance, especially with the full moon. There will be kind of a respite, I think. It seems that way. So the third quarter, what's the big one? So Pluto is now direct, right? Now you have Mercury up in Scorpio oppose Uranus. Oh boy, that's going to be, again, the drowning man. So not only did we have this, with the moon in Scorpio in opposition to Uranus, we had that already. And we had an emotional and intuitive sense. Now Mercury's here in Scorpio, and it's just like conceptualizing this whole aspect of, oh, this man is, save the drowning people. We're going to want to do it through the realm of communication, through data, through sharing, all this other stuff. Even our psychic abilities, we're going to want to work with people on that end too. We're going to want to rescue the drowning people. It is in direct opposition to not only Uranus, but Black Moon Lilith is going to be conjunct with Uranus when this is happening. So remember, this is our survival instinct is going to be very much connected to where Uranus is. So keep that in mind, because again, we're going to be pulled to wanting to save the drowning person, right? And what happens often when you go out and try to save somebody from drowning when you're not really prepared to or trained to do so? There's a good likelihood that you will also drown because they're panicking, right? And so there's a temptation here, but I think with Lilith here, usually this is not a good, with Uranus, this could really, something will drag or pull our attention back to this point, or something will happen and we'll respond instinctively. So good to trust your instincts over here, as opposed to just the realm of your mind. It's able to conceptualize these ideas and this communion, but it's all in the mind right now. And even when it was in the emotions with the moon, it was in opposition, but now it's even stronger with Lilith right here, the self-preservation, the instinct, the root chakra, really pulling to the survival instinct around this too. So I'm gonna be letting some people go at this point. So Pluto, and Pluto is direct now. So the transformer, the god, the lord of death, is also moving direct. So that's going to be interesting. Mars is now coming into, as retrograde, has come into a trine with the south node and a sextile to the north node. So again, this connection to the north or the south node of where we've been, and the ability to create something in real time, in real form, using the alchemy of understanding to actually build something of a structure. You know, Mars is really, really very strongly situated here, but is also again sextile the north node. So it has to do with the realm of the mind. And there's again frustration, but I think that this frustration can be easily quelled if we engage the mind right here, as opposed to just letting ourselves be, there's not any action here when you have a trine. It's just really strongly supported. So I think this will help Mars's frustration at this point. So this is the third quarter. This is after the new moon or the full moon has happened. We're looking at the 8th of October. So Mars is going to trine here. So if Mars wants to engage with the north node, I think that would be a good use of Mars's energy, considering the frustration involved. What else is happening also is in square to Pluto, which is now direct. So Pluto's going to be moving direct and is going to start mulching things pretty quickly. And this square, oh my gosh. 23 Aries. Let's look at it. A pregnant woman in light summer dress. It's inner fulfillment, right? It's being pregnant, and being full of potential. The creative potential has already been, brought into form, and now it's just gestating, and it's just growing and growing. Oh boy, and Pluto's going direct, going, no, I'm destroying. And so you can see here where there is absolutely a square. And again, engaging, I think, with the north node will really probably support Mars, as opposed to getting really frustrated with these aspects. Not only that, let's see what else is happening here. Pluto goes direct, Mars is retrograde, and so we'll have the third quarter square, which is Libra and 18 degrees of Cancer. So even within the next day, you have the third quarter square. Okay. All right, look at that. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of activity. So now we have Mars. We've had Mars here, we have the square. The opposition is still here. There we go. We have the square now from the sun to the moon in Cancer, which is where her home is. And we are going to come back to the same degree that Mercury was at when Mercury squared Jupiter today on the new moon. So the sun comes around to the same degree and is now squaring the moon in Cancer, which is just like, I'm trying to just take care of my responsibilities at home right now emotionally. And this is going to be the two men under arrest. Now, I think that this is when we're going to see things actually happen. And we're not emotionally going to be, the square comes because we're talking about aspects that involve the entire collective and balancing the collective material assets, right? That's what Libra is about. Whereas Cancer is about the individual feeling safe and secure and in the family. And emotionally, we're going to want to feel safe and secure in the family and taking care of our family priorities and responsibilities as an individual. Yet the sun is going to be like, no, we need to take care of this faction that is causing unrest, and it's a natural progression when there needs to be things exiled from the collective in order to make it balanced. This is when I think we're going to start really seeing some things happen, and it's going to challenge people in a very strong way, especially with Mars still squaring Pluto. Now, that's the third quarter square. What is that? A crisis in consciousness. It's not really hard to, because we have to accept what's happening here. Whereas emotionally, we are just trying to, we're going to be wanting to focus on just taking care of life's responsibilities and feeling safe. And this is going to be like, nope, it's time to collectively deal with this. These two men are under arrest. Now, from here, we go through the rest of the week, and Mercury will now be retrograde in Scorpio. We will have had the new moon at this point on the 16th, but before then, it looks like all of this Libra energy, where the sun is going to square all of this. So from that crisis of consciousness about Libra and the moon in Cancer, from there, then the sun is going to square all of this Capricorn energy. And so then it's going to be even more like, so yeah, our attention is definitely on the balance and the fairness and the adjustment that may need to be made, but it's still square to these very, very large processes, which are now all direct, right? Now they're moving forward. And the moon is going to conjunct the sun for the new moon on the 16th. But before then, here, let's just go back like even a day so that you can see, because this is already past the new moon. There we go. So you can see the square here. Neptune is going to come back into a sextile with Jupiter. This is nice and auspicious. I think this is really going to potentially give us some inspiration around things. But what I will say is that, again, it could, depending on how you interact with it, it could also be total propaganda machine. So it just depends. But we have the moon is moving back through Libra, and now this is when the sun is going to be squaring all of this. And what else is going to be happening? The sun will have also trined the north node as well before coming into all of these squares. And so there will be a mental and connection of the mind with where we are headed and where our attention is focused. And right from there, then the sun starts to square all the Capricorn, really testing that. And then when the new moon comes along, it's going to be at the it's going to be at 24 degrees of Libra. And so it's going to be essentially squaring Pluto and squaring Saturn. And this is, again, Arcturus is 23 degrees Libra. So we're going to get an Arcturian kind of opening here, and it's going to be in square to these very big aspects. So what we know and what is actually happening are going to be in, and that's going to really, that's really going to start playing itself out through the rest of the quarter, I think. But leading up to this point, and we're also going to get an yeah, look at this. There's the trine right there to the north node, and this, and Venus and the moon. You're going to see the moon in Virgo is going to trine all of this stuff in Capricorn. And so we're going to go back over where the new moon was and kind of be like, let's see how that personal mastery is matching up with all this Capricorn energy now and what we're feeling about that. And then from there, that's where the next new moon will be. So there's just, and so like I said, Mercury will be stationing retrograde around this time as the lunar cycle is coming to a close. It will be a dark moon in Virgo and Libra. It'll be a dark moon in Libra. So it'll be really difficult, I think, to get a sense of where the balance is. Oh boy, as we come to the end of that cycle. But we also have the sun really supporting where we are headed collectively when it comes to our ability to conceptualize and when it comes to our ability to sense when things are balanced and fair and symmetrical. Because that's going to be a real big thing, a theme with the Libra season, and is really going to come to a head, I think, as the quarter really starts to play itself out up until the the winter solstice. That's what I meant to say. So a lot of big changes. All the Capricorn's going to be direct. There's a lot of connection to the nodes from the sun and Mercury, and the opposition with Mercury and Uranus as well. So there's good. We're really being challenged more and more every day. So the new moon, this cycle, is meant to lead us to a place where we fulfill our individual destiny, and then we can move forward into being of actual service, and providing the knowledge of how to bring about a just and fair world. But it's not going to come from other people giving us that information. This is really about how we individually and then collectively master our ability to create our reality as opposed to waiting for it to be created for us. And this process is going to teach, throughout this period, it's going to teach us how to do it. And the fact that the next new moon is conjunct Arcturus, and how much that star race is very specifically centered around sacred geometry, teaching wisdom. It's ninth dimensional. That seems to be, we cannot get that information until the knowledge is not necessarily transferred collectively, until we have created ourselves as the vessel that can hold it. And that's what this process, this new moon process, is really about. So I know it's a lot of information to go through. It's one of those things where you could probably go back and listen to it throughout the month, and new things will stick out as we go along. Of course, there's going to be weeklies available, and dailies. I want to get back on the daily astrology. And then the daily medicine always incorporates the daily astrology with the intuitive messages that come through. So thank you for sticking it out and participating in this process. And if you are interested in reading or energy work, you can go to the website. It's in the description box below, catalystenergies.net. You can find everything you need at the website, and contact information about how to book a reading, rates for services, the different services, all of that stuff. Social media contact is in the description box below as well, including the email address if you want to reach out that way. So thank you for joining me. I hope you have a very deep and nourishing new moon, and I look forward to how this process unfolds for all of us, and where what we can learn about ourselves, and how we are going to fully step into our destiny as this amazing year starts to wrap up with its final quarter of 2020. Wow, we made it this far. That is just blowing my mind. So thank you very much. I'll see you on the next video. Take care of yourselves. Love you. Bye.